Big Data and Ethics, A Case Against Unethical Collection and Use. Research paper by Jane Williams for Arizona State University. Philosophy course, number 420. Topic, Ethics, Big Data, and AI, with Professor Marcello DeBello. Individuals in modern data-driven societies are being secretly siphoned of their data by big data algorithms. Like the movie Fight Club, where the mentally ill protagonist dumpster dives for discarded human adipose tissue, proceeds in using that tissue to create soap, then sells the soap back to the people who discarded it, individuals are leaking and being siphoned of their adipose tissue in the form of data. This data is a business asset that is sold to third-party stakeholders who utilize the data generated by way of marketing. The highest bidders turn the siphoned data into advertisements for commodities, like soap. Nudging is the use of big data algorithms to manipulate individuals into purchasing the specified marketed products the bidders wanted the individuals to buy. Like the victims in the movie, who unwittingly bought the soap that was made from their own bodies, individuals are unwittingly coerced into choosing predetermined options made available for them by their siphoned data. Without transparency or truly informed consent, individuals are being funneled by nudges into making autonomous choices based on big data algorithms, utilizing the very data the individuals have generated. Individuals naturally produce data exhaust by virtue of living in the information era and are unable to escape big data siphoning. Individuals are the generators, utilizers, and collectors of big data, but they are lacking the power provided by knowing the private insights big data algorithms produce. They are unable to exercise free will from this lack of transparency. Individuals are blind to which direction they are being led. One day they desire this brand of soap and cannot explain why, and it just so happens to be on sale the moment they have the desire. It is common knowledge that individuals are highly susceptible to manipulation, internal bias, habitual practices, and that behavior can be conditioned. The algorithms behind big data assume that individuals are manipulable and predictable, but do not factor in their free will. Big data algorithms are designed with this idea baked in, treating individuals as if they were automatous and not autonomous. Individuals may be strongly shaped by habit, but that does not mean they do not have free will. If humans have free will, and are conscious agents imbued with deontological ethical rights, I intend to demonstrate that the collection and use of big data through their algorithms is inherently unethical because of the insidious nature of the relationship between big data and end-user producers. Without total transparency of their algorithms, big data suggests that humans are simple automata. Based on this assumption, big data's use is inherently unethical because humans are autonomous agents, having free will, imbued with worth by virtue of being human, and have the right to transparency so that they may exercise this free will. Whether an individual has a cell phone or an email address, their data is being siphoned. It is as if individuals are walking glass data exhausts, leaking and producing data through the Internet of Things. While governing bodies attempt to regulate the siphoning of big data differently, the idea that citizens of any nation are free to not participate is a farce. There may be some regulation to data privacy and distribution, but end-user producers are unable to opt out of production or collection of big data simply by virtue of living in modernity. Begin quote. As a result of pervasive computer mediation, nearly every aspect of the world is rendered in a new symbolic dimension, as events, objects, processes, and people become visible, knowable, and shareable in a new way. End quote. This symbolic dimension is a new agent that is pervasive, unavoidable, and powered by algorithms which view individuals as machines. Individuals may have demonstrated initial informed consent when signing user agreements, but the agreements can be argued to be coercive and deceitful. End-user producers may not grasp that their data is a core business asset, being sold to third parties for profit. Their data is even more valuable than they may believe because it is directly tied to their freedom of choice. Shoshana Zuboff coined the term surveillance capitalism when describing this relationship between big data collection and use, She believes that, begin quote, surveillance capitalism establishes a new form of power in which contract and the rule of law are supplanted by the rewards and punishments of a new kind of invisible hand. End quote. Zuboff argues that there is an implied agency to big data, and that, begin quote, this new form of information capitalism aims to predict and modify human behavior as a means to produce revenue and market control. End quote. Innocuous end-user agreements gatekeep the Internet of Things from individuals. The algorithms do not allow for transparency in what data or insights they collect and sell, treating the end-user producers as if they were mere means to the end goal of future profit. This lack of transparency demonstrates the algorithm's underlying assumption. Often, end-user producers purchase a new data device only to be made to agree to have their data siphoned so that they may use the device that they had already purchased. This type of underhanded double-dipping is a dirty way of extorting future wealth at the expense of ethical rights of the customer. This leads to questions of whether the manufacturers of the Internet of Things are trusted custodians of end-users' producers' data, and whether the agreement to have data siphoned is directly tied with the functional use of the device. These questions illustrate the insidious nature of the relationship of end-user producers and big data. But not only are end-user producers coerced into data siphoning, they are also manipulated through nudging. Individuals are being manipulated by the data being collected through use of market nudging. While devices such as laptop computers, fitness watches, or smartphones are being driven by algorithms working under the assumption that individuals are automata, end-user producers are mostly unaware of the impact the data siphoning from these devices has on their personal autonomy. Individuals are predictable in their habits and are manipulable in their emotions. Experiments done on social media networks suggest that mere proximity to emotional charged phrases in social feeds affect end-user producers' subsequent moods as determined by the quality of their posts after exposure. Data is sold for marketing to manipulate individuals to purchase the big data utilizers' stakeholders' wares. For example, the infamous Target teenage pregnancy prediction made in 2008 illustrates just what the data collected can indicate about individual private matters. This data can predict when someone is pregnant, or even more seriously, if someone is likely to commit a crime. If individuals are unable to escape the collection and use of big data, that inability is oppressive and impinges freedom of will of the individual. Begin quote. Already, simply the absence of knowledge about which data is in fact collected or what it can be used for puts the data generator, online consumers, cell phone owning people, etc., at an ethical disadvantage by knowledge and free will. The Internet of Things further contributes to the distance between one actor's knowledge and will and the other actor's source of information and power. End quote. If individuals are not provided the choice of transparency about the algorithms collecting their data, then they are unable to determine if their choices are made from their own free will or if they were manipulated by third-party actors who have purchased their data. This shift of big data in modernity is unprecedented, and our old way of thinking about the social contract, embedded in many democracies, is eroding due to the nature of big data's pervasiveness. John Locke had enormous influence on development of modern democracies, and believed that individuals related to their government through the doctrine of tacit consent, meaning that individuals agree to the laws of the territory if they are physically in those territories. While democracies have been shaped by this consent, considering big data's pervasiveness, is this applicable still in modernity? Are individuals able to move to a place that does not collect data, exhaust, and manipulate them? As big data is inescapable and assumes that individuals do not require transparency, the concept of tacit consent is irreparably altered. Big data algorithms themselves are made by individuals, and the common prevailing assumption in modernity is that Homo sapien has evolved so that their genetics drive their behavior. Famous evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins said, begin quote, We are survival machines, robot vehicles blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes." End quote. Tacit to this view is the belief that physical bodies produce consciousness. Studies in neuroscience demonstrate evidence that the process of decision-making is observable inside the brain 7 seconds before the awareness of the decision is made conscious to the subject. This monist view is prevalent and present in the assumptions of big data algorithms, that individuals are biological automata without free will. Before the information era, modernity has shifted from commonly held deontological ethics in governance and daily life to a teleological ethics with help through the conception of consequentialism. Parallel to this shift is one from dualist to monist. Begin quote. The monistic model rejects any splitting of man into parts and views him as a unified organism of great complexity and varied functioning. End quote. The question of free will is at the heart of the argument against the use of big data. As some claim, the introduction of big data into our society has shifted moral agency from that of the individual to that of a network of agents. According to Andred Zwitter, the hyperconnectivity of collected data produces an exacerbation in responsibility of moral agency. Begin quote. This changes foundational assumptions about ethical responsibility by changing what power is and the extent we can talk of free will by reducing knowable outcomes of actions while increasing unintended consequences. End quote. As big data is an essential and unavoidable aspect of modernity, Zwitter's solution is to find an innovative approach to ethical understanding of the relationship between individuals and big data by challenging assumptions of sole moral agency. Rather than assigning individuals a partial responsibility in a rewriting of moral agency as relational between a network of stakeholders, re-evaluating our inherent ontological assumptions may give insight to solutions for ethical issues presented by big data. Going backwards in time may help pave the way forwards by challenging the assumption that Homo sapien is automatous. The fact that individuals can create and question theoretical ethical problems, such as the infamous trolley problem, and instantly recognize problems as distinctly ethical, is existential evidence that those individuals are not automata and do have free will due to the complicated understanding and variation of responses. I believe a species who can think abstractly on agency and causation has free will because of their ability for sapience, and that their sapience grants them autonomy. Autonomy grants the right to not be treated merely as a means to an end, but as an end in themselves, as described by Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, a deontological ethics that focuses on the will of the moral agent rather than the consequence of actions from a moral agent. The monist argument follows that our conscious experiences are produced by our physical biology. However, the argument does not produce evidence of the moment that consciousness emerges. Begin quote. Physicalists believe that our brains cause our conscious experiences and our behavior, but they have no idea how, and there is no theory that a scientist has ever come up with that explains how the neural activity could cause a single conscious experience like the taste of chocolate. End quote. The problem of causation flows both ways and in both ontological stances. Begin quote. So the two pillars of modern anti-free will thought are chance and causality, and both of them end in a regress that ends in darkness, so they're in no better place than those of us who postulate free will. End quote. By taking the assumption that Homo sapien is an agent of free will, the moral agency then is not a shared responsibility between the stakeholders, but solely the responsibility of the implementations of the collection and use of big data through their algorithms. Big data must treat individuals as ends in themselves and not just as mere means, so that individuals may exercise their free will. One obvious objection to the argument is that big data is beneficial for society, even if they treat individuals as automata. Algorithms help individuals by learning their habits and doing the demanding work of research for them, such as sifting through the top-rated small home appliances for the coffee maker they have been considering. The algorithms predict they would soon purchase one based on the data the algorithms have siphoned, then nudge them in the direction of the best product for their lifestyle. This type of catering to the individual would ease some modern problems rather than create them. Pedro Domingos is an advocate for this type of algorithmic catering and sees a future in which the machine learning behind the big data algorithms enhance individuals. Begin quote. For example, an e-commerce site can try many different ways of presenting a product and choose the one that leads to the most purchases. You've probably participated in thousands of these experiments without knowing it. End quote. A reply to this objection is to discern between beneficial and ethical. Beneficial does not necessarily mean ethical. As Zuboff claims, begin quote, while big data may be set to other uses, those do not erase its origins in an extractive project founded on formal indifferences to the populations that comprise both its data sources and its ultimate targets. End quote. Beneficial is different from ethical. Many things may be beneficial but are unethical, such as stumbling across lost funds. Is it ethically right to keep the funds, or should you return them to whomever lost them? Some ethics claim that it is ethically right to keep the funds if that means it brings the most happiness to the most people. This claim is based on the utilitarian calculus, a formalized ethics that produces some paradoxical ethical results, such as the ethical right to murder, if it brings about the most good. Elizabeth Anscombe coined the label consequentialism in her work Modern Moral Philosophy, in which she rejected the utilitarian calculus. Anscombe opposed consequentialism on several accounts, one of which is that a theory of ethics must not say that an ethical right is something that in all situations is considered a wrong, but with exceptions. For instance, labeling murder as an ethical right because it produces more good when performed. If murder is inherently ethically wrong, then no ethics should claim that it is right. Another objection could be that nudging does not take away individuals' free will, but enhances end-user producers' freedom of choice. To say that individuals are being influenced such that they no longer have free will and are no longer autonomous is using the slippery slope fallacy. It can be argued that as the machine learning algorithms improve, that the options provided might expand, opening new options rather than narrowing to individual preference. If one trusts the algorithms to be a benefit, and the results demonstrate that benefit, is that not then simply allowing technologies to inform choices and not subverting freedom of choice? A reply to the second objection is to argue that nudging is manipulation, whether consensual, and the problem of transparency does detract from trust. Nudging is manipulation of individuals or groups to make predetermined choices. Whether the choices are considered beneficial by the individuals manipulated is focusing on the insidious nature of big data's implementation and disregarding the problem. The problem for this objection lies in trust. Trust cannot be gained without transparency, especially with the subtle nature of nudging. Perceiving demonstrated benefits as proof of freedom of choice is exercising blind faith, not informed choice. Without transparency, individuals do not know if the algorithms are working towards their best interests, regardless if they perceive the outcomes to be something that they think they chose. Without having access to the insights the algorithms produce, individuals are at the mercy of nudging without the tools to understand if they are being nudged. Without transparency, individuals have less freedom to make informed decisions about their inescapable data exhaust and consumption. It is possible for big data algorithms to treat individuals as autonomous agents with free will by giving end-user producers access to the insights produced by these algorithms. For example, the IBM peer social networking platform, Watson, has been experimenting with transparency of algorithms and giving the control back to the end-user producer with remarkable success. Begin quote. Could this approach to transparency, or this culture of transparency, work in the external social sphere? I personally believe it could, and more importantly, I believe it should. Much as we have given our employees access to the analytics and control on the analytics that we generate about them, why should a consumer have less level of transparency from the services that they use? I know personally I would like to know what sort of assumptions my favorite retailer might be making about me and what they are doing with those insights." End quote. Solution designer Mary Wallace asks, with no transparency of information, no means to escape their collection, production, or use, big data algorithms are inherently unethical by treating individuals as if they are simple automata, while overlooking individual autonomy and free will. A solution may be found in extreme transparency and revolution of control, shifting from the collectors to the hands of the end-user producers. Without transparency and control, individuals are like Somni 456 in the beginning of the movie Cloud Atlas, unable to recognize that they are forced to produce and consume their own data, perpetuating their own enslavement, without understanding the mechanisms which enabled their existence in the first place. Works cited and footnotes are available in PDF on the website. Thank you.